I have two daughters. Jessica is 36. She's a dermatologist in San Diego with a thriving practice. Botox, fillers, laser treatments, the kind of medicine that makes people feel beautiful. She pulls in close to $400,000 a year, lives in La Jolla in a house overlooking the ocean, drives a Mercedes, married to Ryan, a tech entrepreneur who sold his startup for $8 million 3 years ago. Then there's my youngest, Sarah, 31 years old. She manages a small bakery in Tempe, makes about $32,000 a year, lives in a studio apartment she can barely afford. Drives a 2008 Toyota Corolla with a crack in the windshield and a check engine light that's been on for 6 months. I paid for both their educations. Jessica went to Stanford undergrad, then UC San Diego for medical school. $470,000 total, every penny I had saved, plus loans Michael and I took out together. Sarah went to community college for 2 years, then Arizona State. $68,000 total, not because I loved her less, because by the time Sarah was college-aged, we were rebuilding after the 2008 recession. We'd lost 2 properties, Michael was sick, money was tight, Sarah never complained. She worked full-time at a coffee shop while taking classes, graduated with honors, never asked for more than we could give. Jessica calls maybe once a month. Usually when she needs something, advice on an investment property, my opinion on a new car. Once she called to tell me she'd been featured in San Diego magazine, Top 40 Under 40 Doctors. She texted me the article. I printed it out and put it on my refrigerator. It's still there. Sarah calls every Sunday, like clockwork, 6 p.m. We talk for an hour, sometimes more. She asks about my garden, whether I'm eating enough, if I've been to the doctor lately. She tells me about the bakery, about the regular customers who have become friends, about the sourdough starter she's been nurturing for 3 years that she named Harold. Last Sunday, Sarah asked if I needed help with anything around the house. The AC unit is making a weird noise, I'd said. I should probably get someone to look at it. I'll come over Saturday, she'd said immediately. I know a guy from the bakery who does HVAC. He owes me a favor. Honey, you don't have to. Mom, I want to. Let me help. That's Sarah, always trying to help when she barely has enough for herself. Jessica hasn't visited in 14 months, not since Michael's funeral. She'd flown in for 2 days, stayed at a hotel downtown, and left right after the service. Practice is busy, Mom. I've got patients scheduled. I understood. I did, but it still hurt. I was sitting alone at my dining table on a Tuesday evening in March when I made the decision that would tear my family apart and rebuild it into something unrecognizable. The table could seat 8, but tonight only 1 chair was occupied. Mine. The house felt too big, too empty, too quiet. My name is Helen Crawford. I'm 62 years old. I've lived in this house in Scottsdale, Arizona for 34 years. My husband Michael died 4 years ago from complications of diabetes. The disease took him slowly, then all at once. One day he was here. The next, he wasn't. We built this life together, a modest real estate investment business that grew into something substantial. 7 properties across Phoenix and Scottsdale, nothing flashy but enough to live comfortably. Enough to send both our daughters to college without debt, enough to retire early if we wanted, but we never got that chance. Michael died at 63, and I've been alone ever since. Tonight, sitting alone at this table, I thought about something Michael said 3 weeks before he died. We were in the hospital room. He was on dialysis, tubes and machines, and that awful beeping that never stopped. Helen, he'd said, his voice weak, I'm worried about the girls. They're fine, they're both doing well. Are they? He'd looked at me with those eyes that could always see through my pretending. When's the last time Jessica asked how you're doing? Not how the properties are doing. I hadn't answered. And Sarah, he'd continued, she's drowning and won't admit it because she doesn't want to burden you. Michael, I need you to do something for me. His hand had found mine. After I'm gone, test them, see who shows up when you really need them, not with money, with presence, with sacrifice. I need to know they learned what we tried to teach them. I'd promised him, but I never did it. Never tested them, never pushed, until tonight. I pulled out my phone and opened my notes app, started typing. Plan, fake cancer diagnosis, document everything, see who shows up. See who they really are when I have nothing to offer them. I stared at those words for 10 minutes. This was insane, cruel, manipulative, but Michael's voice echoed in my head. See who shows up when you really need them. I hit save. 3 days later, I sat across from my attorney, David Walsh. He'd been Michael's best friend since college. 65 years old, silver-haired, the kind of man who listens more than he talks. His office smelled like old books and coffee. Legal documents lined the shelves. Photos of his grandchildren covered his desk. You want to fake a terminal illness, he said slowly. Yes, Helen, this is insane. I know, he leaned back in his leather chair. Why, I told him everything, Michael's last request, the loneliness, the 4 years of wondering if my daughters loved me or just what I could give them, the need to know before it was too late. David was quiet for a long time, then, I'll help you, but only under 3 conditions. I leaned forward. 1, you see a real doctor, we document that you're healthy. This is a test, not a lie that destroys medical records. Agreed. 2, if either daughter crosses into genuinely dangerous territory financially, physically, emotionally, we stop immediately. Agreed. 3, I retain the right to pull the plug at any point if I think you're going too far. I met his eyes. You sound like Michael. That's because he made me promise to protect you, even from yourself. We shook hands. Over the next week, David helped me build my new identity. Not Helen Crawford, widow with 7 investment properties and a comfortable retirement, but Helen Crawford, desperate woman who'd lost everything to medical bills. I went to Dr. Sarah Chen, my primary care physician of 15 years, told her what I was planning. She was horrified at first, then understanding. Your husband was a good man, she'd said. If this is what you need to do to honor his memory, I'll help, but we do this right. She ran tests, full blood work, CT scan, imaging, everything came back clean, healthy 62-year-old woman, a little arthritis. Slightly elevated cholesterol, but cancer? Nothing. Dr. Chen created a file, documented my actual health, then she wrote a second set of documents. Fake diagnosis, stage 3 ovarian cancer, advanced, aggressive. Prognosis, 12 to 18 months without treatment. The fake bills were equally elaborate. Imaging, $3,200, consultations, $4,800, lab work, $2,600, treatment plan. $98,000, total medical expenses, $108,600. I stared at those numbers. That's what it would actually cost to treat cancer without insurance. That's what people faced every single day. Next, I went shopping at Goodwill, bought clothes that looked worn, tired, baggy sweatshirts, faded jeans, shoes with scuffed soles, $53 total. I cut my hair short at a budget salon, $12. Not the elegant style I usually wore, but choppy, uneven, like I'd done it myself in a moment of desperation. I learned to make my face look hollow. Makeup in reverse, shadows under my eyes, sallow skin. The appearance of someone losing a battle. David created foreclosure notices for my properties, fake but convincing. Due to unpaid medical expenses, the following properties are being seized, all 7 of them. Everything Michael and I had built. On April 15th, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror. The woman staring back wasn't me, thin hair, pale skin, clothes hanging loose. Eyes carrying a fear I didn't have to fake because I was terrified of what I was about to do. I took a photo, sent it to David with 2 words, I'm ready. His response, God help us both. I packed a small bag. Not my usual luggage, but a worn duffel from the thrift store. Inside, the fake medical documents, the foreclosure notices, 1 change of clothes, and a photo of Michael. I couldn't leave that behind. On April 16th, I boarded a plane to San Diego. I was going to see my daughter, the dermatologist, the one who made $400,000 a year. The one who'd missed her father's final weeks because she was too busy. Let's see if she was too busy for this. If you're still with me, comment truth below, because what happens next will break your heart and change everything. The heat hit me when I stepped off the plane at San Diego Airport. Dry California heat, different from Arizona's. I took the city bus toward La Jolla, $2.50. The bus was half full. I sat near the back. An elderly woman sat across from me, maybe 75. She carried 2 grocery bags and a cane. Visiting someone? She asked. My daughter. Her weathered face softened. That's nice, I have a daughter too, lawyer in Boston. Big firm? She stared out the window. Haven't seen her in 3 years. My chest tightened. I'm sorry, don't be. Successful people don't have time for old ladies who can't keep up. I reached over and touched her hand. She squeezed back. When I got off at my stop, she nodded. I wondered if Jessica would see her future in that woman's eyes. La Jolla is beautiful, ocean views, palm trees, houses worth millions. Jessica's medical practice was on Prospect Street in a modern glass building. The sign read, Dr. Jessica Crawford, M.D. Dermatology and Aesthetic Medicine. I stood across the street and watched through the floor-to-ceiling windows. White marble lobby, crystal light fixtures, 4 receptionists in designer clothes, patients in expensive jewelry moving through like they own the world. A price board caught my eye, Botox, $800 lip fillers. $1,200 laser facial, $2,500 chemical peel, $1,800. I touched the fake medical bills in my bag. My treatment supposedly cost $98,000. Jessica charged more for laser facials than most people made in a month. At 6 p.m. she emerged, 36 years old, blonde hair perfectly styled. White coat over designer dress, heels that probably cost $600. She looked successful, polished, untouchable. She walked to her car, the Mercedes, and I stepped forward. Jessica, she turned, looked right at me for 3 seconds, nothing registered, then her eyes went wide. Mom, I stood there in my Goodwill clothes, choppy hair, hollow cheeks. Everything I'd built for this moment. Hi, sweetheart, she stared at my face, my clothes, the duffel bag. What are you doing here? You look, she stopped. Sick, I finished. I am, her face went pale. What's wrong? Can we talk? Somewhere private? She glanced back at the building, her pristine world, then at me. Come inside, not out here. The clinic smelled like lavender and money. She led me past the reception desk, through a hallway lined with before and after photos, into her private office. She closed the door. Mom, what happened? I told her the story David and I had prepared. Diagnosed 2 months ago, stage 3 ovarian cancer, advanced, aggressive. I kept my voice steady, controlled. The treatment? I pulled out the fake documents. It's expensive. She glanced at the papers, didn't pick them up. I've had to sell the properties, all of them, to pay for the experimental treatment program in Houston. I paused. I have nothing left, Jessica. I'm sleeping in my car. 47 seconds of silence. I counted them. She walked to her window, looked out at the ocean view, the La Jolla coastline stretching endlessly. Finally, she turned back. Mom, she opened her designer purse, Hermes, probably $10,000, and pulled out her wallet. Ryan and I just put down $300,000 on a vacation property in Cabo. Our cash flow is extremely tight right now. She extracted a single bill, $100, held it out to me. This should cover food for a few days. I stared at that bill, $100. I'd paid $470,000 for her education. Stanford, medical school, every textbook, every apartment, every meal plan, $470,000, and she was handing me $100. There are resources, she continued, setting the bill on her desk when I didn't take it. Shelters, programs, I can get you a list. I looked up at her, at my daughter, at the stranger in the white coat. Just temporarily, she added. Until you get back on your feet. Mom, I have a dinner reservation at 7:30. Ryan's waiting. She came around the desk and kissed my cheek, professional, distant. Take care of yourself, and Mom, she paused at the door. Maybe consider stopping treatment if it's too expensive. Quality of life, you know, sometimes prolonging things just makes it worse. She said it like she was suggesting I skip dessert, stop treatment. Let yourself die so you don't inconvenience anyone with medical bills. I picked up the $100 bill, folded it carefully, put it in my pocket. Thank you, sweetheart, she smiled, relieved. Probably that I wasn't going to make a scene. Of course, let me know how you're doing, okay? She held the office door open. I walked out, past the before and after photos, past the empty reception desk. Through the glass doors into the California evening, I stood on the sidewalk for 5 minutes, then I walked toward the Greyhound station. My test had just begun. The bus from San Diego to Phoenix took 9 hours. I had plenty of time to think, to wonder if I'd made a terrible mistake, to replay the look on Jessica's face when she handed me that $100 bill, not quite guilt, not quite indifference, something in between. Self-preservation disguised as helplessness. I arrived in Phoenix at 6 a.m. on a Tuesday. I didn't take a taxi, I walked, 3 miles from the bus station to Sarah's apartment in Tempe. By the time I reached her building, my feet ached. The duffel bag cut into my shoulder, but I needed this. Needed Sarah to see me like this, desperate, exhausted. Her apartment was a converted garage behind a larger house. 320 square feet, one room that served as bedroom, living room, and kitchen, a bathroom the size of a closet, but the front step had a pot of geraniums, bright red, carefully tended. That was Sarah. Making beauty wherever she was. I knocked at 7:15 a.m. I knew she'd be awake. She worked the early shift at the bakery, 6 a.m. to 2 p.m., 5 days a week. The door opened. Sarah stood there in flour-dusted clothes, hair pulled back, exhausted from her shift. She looked at me, and her face crumpled. Mom, she didn't ask what happened, didn't ask why I was there. Just pulled me inside and wrapped her arms around me so tight I couldn't breathe. You're freezing, you're shaking, what happened? I told her the same story, the diagnosis, the treatment, the properties sold. The $100 Jessica had given me. Sarah's grip tightened. When I got to the part about Jessica suggesting I stop treatment, Sarah pulled back and looked at me with tears streaming down her face. She said what? She had a dinner reservation. Sarah grabbed my hands. You're staying here, you take the bed, I'll sleep on the floor. Sarah, no, Mom, she gripped my shoulders. You're sick, you take the bed. She made me breakfast. Scrambled eggs, toast, orange juice. We ate at her small table, 2 chairs, scratched wood, 1 uneven leg. After breakfast, she tucked me into her bed, her only bed with her only blanket. Get some rest, Mom. We'll figure this out. She kissed my forehead. I lay in the dark, wrapped in her blanket, the one she'd given up to sleep on the floor. Then I heard her in the bathroom. The door clicked shut. Her voice came through, low and urgent. Hey, it's me. I need to pick up extra shifts, as many as you can give me. My chest tightened. I need money fast. My mom, she's sick, cancer, I just need to help her. A pause. I don't care what shifts, mornings, nights, weekends. Whatever you have, please. I stared at the ceiling. What had I done? Over the next 2 weeks, I watched Sarah destroy herself for me for a lie. She switched to working doubles, 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the bakery. Then 4 p.m. to midnight at a diner across town, 16-hour days, 7 days a week. I tried to stop her. Sarah, you'll make yourself sick. Mom, you gave me everything. I can work hard for a few weeks. But it wasn't a few weeks, it became a month, then 6 weeks. I watched her lose weight, watched the dark circles under her eyes deepen. Watched her hands shake from exhaustion when she poured my coffee in the morning. One night she came home at 1 a.m. with a black eye. A customer at the diner had gotten drunk and aggressive. She'd tried to break up a fight. I'm fine, she insisted when I touched her face. Really, but she wasn't fine. On week 5 she told me her plan. Mom, I've saved $4,300. It's not enough for treatment, but it's a start. She pulled out a piece of paper, her car title. The Corolla is worth maybe $6,000 if I sell it, private party. That gives us over $10,000 total. I stared at that title. Her car, the only thing she owned worth anything. We can't get you to Houston without a car anyway, she continued. So we sell mine, use the money for treatment, and we'll figure out transportation later. Maybe the hospital has a shuttle or something. She said it so matter-of-factly, like selling the one thing that gave her independence and mobility was nothing. Sarah, no, Mom, it's just a car. It's your car. How will you get to work? Bus, bike, I'll figure it out. She squeezed my hand. Mom, you're dying, a car doesn't matter. I looked at my youngest daughter, 31 years old, working herself to exhaustion, willing to sell her only asset. For a mother who was lying to her, that night I called David. I need to end this. Now, what happened? She's selling her car, David. She's worked 80-hour weeks for 6 weeks. She has a black eye from breaking up a fight at the diner. I can't do this anymore. Helen, we discussed. I know what we discussed, but I'm watching her destroy herself for a lie. This ends now. Silence, then okay, but we do it right. We reveal the truth in a way that honors what both daughters showed you. Jessica's failure, Sarah's sacrifice, both matter. How? There's a charity gala, Phoenix Medical Foundation, next Saturday. Both daughters will be invited. I'll handle the rest. I hung up and looked at Sarah's car title sitting on the kitchen counter. I'd gotten my answer. I knew exactly who my daughters were. Now I had to face what I'd done to find out. If you're still reading, comment sacrifice below, because what comes next will change 3 lives forever. The Phoenix Medical Foundation Gala was held at the Arizona Biltmore. Black tie, 500 guests. Doctors, lawyers, philanthropists, the people who ran this city. I hadn't been to an event like this since Michael died. The invitation had come through David, 2 VIP tickets, one for me, one for Sarah. Jessica had her own invitation. David had made sure of it. Dr. Jessica Crawford, featured speaker on medical ethics and access to care. The irony wasn't lost on me. Saturday evening, I helped Sarah get ready. We'd gone shopping 2 days earlier. I'd insisted on buying her a dress. Navy blue, simple, beautiful, $140 at Macy's. "Mom, this is too much," she'd protested. "You deserve it," I'd said. Now watching her in that dress, hair down for once, no flower dust, no exhaustion visible for just this moment, she looked radiant. "You look beautiful, sweetheart." I feel weird. Like I'm playing dress up. You belong here just as much as anyone. We arrived at 7 p.m. The ballroom glittered with chandeliers and gold accents. Waiters circulated with champagne. A string quartet played near the stage. I dressed carefully too, not the Goodwill clothes, my old self. The woman I was before this test, elegant, put together. Sarah held my arm. "Are you sure you're feeling up to this?" "I'm fine." We found our table. David sat there with his wife, a few other guests I didn't know. Jessica arrived at 7:30. She wore a designer gown, Tom Ford, probably $8,000. Her husband Ryan beside her in a custom tuxedo. They looked like they belonged in a magazine. She saw me across the room. Our eyes met. Her face went confused, then shocked. I was supposed to be dying, sleeping in my car, desperate. Instead, I was here, healthy, put together. She started toward us. But the program began. A woman at the podium welcomed everyone. Talked about the foundation's mission, access to health care, reducing medical debt. Then she introduced the evening's speaker. Dr. Jessica Crawford has built one of San Diego's most successful dermatology practices. Tonight, she'll speak about medical ethics in the modern age. Applause. Jessica walked to the stage, composed, professional. She began her speech, talked about the importance of accessible healthcare. About doctors' responsibility to serve all patients, not just those who could pay. The irony was suffocating. Halfway through her speech, the lights dimmed. A screen descended behind her. Jessica turned, confused. My face appeared on that screen, a video recorded 3 days ago with David's help. "My name is Helen Crawford," my voice echoed through the ballroom. "6 weeks ago, I did something terrible. I faked a terminal cancer diagnosis." Gasps throughout the room. Jessica's face went white. The video continued. I explained everything: Michael's last request, the test, the fake diagnosis. Then footage appeared. Security camera from Jessica's medical office building. Grainy but clear, me walking in wearing Goodwill clothes, walking out 20 minutes later with a $100 bill. My voice narrated. I told my eldest daughter I was dying. That I'd lost everything, that I needed help. She gave me $100 and directions to a homeless shelter. The screen split. On the left, Jessica's office building. On the right, Sarah's tiny apartment. More footage. Security camera from Sarah's building. Me arriving at 7 a.m. Sarah pulling me inside. Then over the next 6 weeks, Sarah leaving for work at 5:30 a.m., coming home at 1 a.m., the bruised eye. The exhaustion visible even in grainy footage. My voice continued. My youngest daughter makes $32,000 a year. She worked 16-hour days for 6 weeks. She was going to sell her car, her only asset, to help pay for treatment that didn't exist. The screen went black. The lights came up. Jessica stood frozen at the podium, tears streaming down her face. Her carefully applied makeup ruined. The room was silent. I stood from my seat, walked to the stage. I tested my daughters, I said into the microphone Jessica had abandoned, not because I wanted to hurt them. Because I needed to know who they were when I had nothing to give them. No money, no properties, no advantage, just need. I looked at Jessica. My daughter who has everything gave me $100. I looked at Sarah, who was crying now. My daughter who has nothing gave me everything she had. I pulled out an envelope. Tonight, I'm announcing my estate decisions, how I'll distribute my assets. The room held its breath. I own 7 properties worth approximately $4 million, investment accounts totaling $900,000, total estate $4.9 million, murmurs throughout the crowd. Sarah receives $3 million. Full ownership of 3 properties, seed funding for her bakery, no conditions. Sarah's hands flew to her mouth. Jessica receives $1 million, conditional, to be released only after she completes 1,000 hours of volunteer medical service at free clinics. And 1 year of family therapy with her sister. Jessica's legs buckled. Someone caught her. The remaining $900,000 goes to medical debt relief programs to help families who actually face what I only pretended to face. I set down the microphone. The room erupted, some people clapping, some crying, some just staring. Jessica stumbled off the stage, came toward me. "Mom, Sarah stepped between us, not aggressive, just present. "Jess," she said quietly. "Not now." Jessica looked at her younger sister, at the woman she'd looked down on for years, the unsuccessful one. "I'm sorry," Jessica whispered. "Sarah, I'm so sorry." Sarah opened her arms. Jessica collapsed into them, sobbing. I watched my daughters hold each other, one who'd had everything and gave nothing, one who'd had nothing and gave everything, both learning what it meant to be family. 3 months later, I stood in Sarah's new kitchen. Not the converted garage, but a small house in Phoenix she'd bought with part of her inheritance. Nothing extravagant, just a real home with a real kitchen and a backyard where she could grow herbs. She was testing recipes. Planning her bakery, Sweet Sarah's, opening next spring. Jessica had kept her word. She'd closed her San Diego practice, moved back to Phoenix, opened a small clinic focusing on reconstructive surgery for burn victims and accident survivors. Every Saturday, she volunteered at the free clinic. She'd completed 400 hours so far. Last week, she'd performed 8 hours of surgery on a homeless veteran with severe facial burns, pro bono. When she'd removed the bandages, he'd cried. "I look like myself again," he'd said. She'd called me that night. "Mom, I finally understand what Dad meant about healing people, not just making them pretty." Tonight was our first family dinner since everything changed. Me, Sarah, Jessica, and Ryan, 4-place settings at Sarah's new table. Jessica brought wine. "It's not fancy, just something I picked up." "It's perfect," Sarah said. We ate, laughed, talked about Sarah's bakery plans, about Jessica's clinic, about the families we'd helped with the medical debt relief fund. After dinner, Jessica pulled out a folded piece of paper. "I wrote something for you both," she read aloud, her voice shaking. An apology, a real one. Not just words, but acknowledgement of what she'd done, what she'd failed to do, who she'd become, and who she wanted to be. When she finished, Sarah stood and took her sister's hands. "We're family, that's what matters," they embraced. I thought about Michael, about his last request, about the test that nearly destroyed us. He'd been right. Sometimes you have to break to rebuild. Sometimes love means doing the hard thing. 6 months after the gala, Sarah's bakery opened. Sweet Sarah's had 20 seats. Exposed brick walls, display cases full of fresh bread and pastries, and one special program: every Sunday anyone who couldn't afford food could eat for free, no questions asked. Jessica worked the counter every Sunday, serving food, washing dishes. Present, one Sunday an elderly woman came in, thin, worn clothes reminded me of the woman on the San Diego bus. "How much for the soup?" she'd asked. "On Sundays, everything's free," Sarah said. The woman started crying. "Really?" Jessica came over, guided her to a table, brought her soup, bread, coffee, sat with her while she ate. I watched from the kitchen, my daughters together, serving. Finally understanding what Michael had tried to teach them. Wealth isn't what you earn, it's what you give when giving costs you everything. If you've read this far, I need you to comment family below, and let me ask you something. What would your children do if you had nothing? Would they sacrifice, or would they hand you a $100 bill and walk away? Think about it, because the time to teach them is now, while you still can. This story contains dramatized elements for reflection, but the lesson is real. Don't wait for a crisis to discover who your family really is. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe for more stories about family, sacrifice, and the hard truths we need to face. And remember, real wealth isn't measured in dollars, it's measured in who stands beside you when everything else is gone.